Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Writers Workshop. My name is Salim. I will be serving as your host tonight and will help navigate questions. Our topic tonight is Where to Begin with local author Jeanette Watts. Before I introduce Jeanette, I do want to give a few updates about the library. So we are open back to our normal hours. However, if you don't feel comfortable coming into the library just yet, that's okay. We are continuing our curbside delivery service. This is where you can request items at home and pick them up in front of the library. So for more information on that, you can visit champaign.org/curbside. If you need help and want to reach out to staff, there are a few ways you can do that. So you can schedule a consultation at champaign.org/book-a-librarian. You can chat with us anytime the library is open, and you can email us at librarian@champaign.org. I also want to give a few instructions for communicating through Zoom tonight. So depending on your device, at the bottom of the screen, you should see the option to chat. That's where you can type your question in. Next to that is the raise hand option if you want to use your microphone, and we can unmute you. Jeanette will be answering questions more in the second half of her presentation, where we'll have writing prompts, and just type your question in chat and I can relay that to Jeanette. With that said, I'd like to now introduce our instructor. So Jeanette is a local author with experience writing in multiple genres and industries, including historical fiction, television commercials, marketing newspapers, and much more. Her current projects include a collection of essays for Kindle Vella, as well as her first children's book. She's here tonight to share tips on how to start writing your story. Jeanette, thank you again for being here. I will turn it over to you now.
Hi, thank you. So we're just going to talk about writing in general. And can everybody see me? I'm like in the little screen here. I just want to make sure we're good. Okay. So when you've got something to say, why are you taking a writing class, right? You've got something to say, and it's like, well, where do you start your story? Well, why don't we start by looking? I'm sitting here in my library so that we could go through a whole bunch of books and see what other people did when they were starting their stories. I'm going to start with one of my all-time favorites, the first sentence with Gone with the Wind. And as I'm flipping, I apologize for the fact I had carpal tunnel surgery on Monday, so I am going to be flubbing around here with everything because I am right-handed, and of course we had to operate first on the hand that my dominant hand, so I will be a little slow with everything here. So as I'm floundering, got there we go, first page. But yeah, do you remember what is the first sentence, first couple of sentences, the first paragraph of your favorite books? Well, let's find out what some of them are. Gone with the Wind. Chapter 1. Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized it when caught by her charm as the Tarleton twins were. In her face were too sharply blended the delicate features of her mother, a coast aristocrat of French descent, and the heavy ones of her florid Irish father. But it was an arresting face, pointed of chin, square of jaw. Her eyes were pale green without a touch of hail, starred with bristly black lashes and slightly tilted at the ends. So, moving on. What's the first sentence of Harry Potter? This one surprised me because I did not remember. Harry Potter, the very first sentence of the sentences of the very first Harry Potter book. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Next, I've got The Hunger Games. So we're going from one young adult to another young adult. So, but more fantasy to more science fiction. Now we're in first person. When I wake up, the other side of the bed is cold. My fingers stretch out, seeking Prim's warmth, but finding only the rough canvas cover of the mattress. She must have had bad dreams and climbed in with our mother. Of course she did. This is the day of the reaping. Now I'm moving to a children's book. This one happens to be my husband's very favorite children's book as a kid. He went, and I don't remember, he spent something like $70 to get this itty bitty little children's book, but it was his favorite as a kid. So now we have it. The first page. Thump. What was it? Thump, thump. It was something big. It shook the earth. It was a meat-eating dinosaur. I love that the mystery is solved on the front page, on the very first page. So, yes. I was going to read from Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, but it's sort of a long, it's a very long thing. It's basically a setup of a murder, and you kind of like, before you really get very far, you sort of have to read the first 2 pages, and it's like, that's an awful lot. The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. A throng of bearded men in sad-colored garments and gray steeple-crowned hats, intermixed with women, some wearing hoods and others bareheaded, was assembled in front of a wooden edifice, the door of which was heavily timbered with oak and studded with iron spikes. And now I'm going to another childhood favorite, Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. The very first sentence, or first paragraph. Once again, flipping the pages here because I have no manual dexterity. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. It's so dreadful to be poor, sighed Meg, looking down at her old dress. I don't think it's fair for some girls to have plenty of pretty things and other girls nothing at all, added little Amy with an injured sniff. We've got mother and father and each other, said Beth contentedly from her corner. So, last one I'm going to play with, because we're going to go onwards from there, is I have Jane Austen's complete works. So I've got 3 of her books. And I think it's interesting how the same author used very different things. Whoops. Starting with Emma. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. Persuasion by Jane Austen. Sir Walter Elliot of Kellynch Hall in Somersetshire was a man who, for his own amusement, never took up any book but the baronetage. There he found occupation for an idle hour and consolation in a distressed one. There his faculties were roused into admiration and respect by contemplating the limited remnant of the earliest patents. There any unwelcome sensations arising from domestic affairs changed naturally into pity and contempt, as he turned over the almost endless creations of the last century, and there, if every other leaf were powerless, he could read his own history with an interest which never failed. This was the page at which the favorite volume always opened. Elliot of Kellynch Hall. I'm going to, as a contrast, I've written, one of my books is a copy, I've taken Persuasion, but I translated it from the 1800s to the early 2000s. And I did a chapter by chapter translation into modern times and modern English. Chapter 1. Walter Elliot's favorite book was Who's Who in America. While most financiers might have preferred the Wall Street Journal, that was merely reading in order to get the day's news. That was work, not pleasure. Seeing his entry always gave him a boost on a bad day. On the other hand, it still gave him a boost of satisfaction and pleasure when he was having a good day. Well, Elliot, Walter J. So, as you see, not that far off. So, one of the things that every entry, whoops, and now I've just accidentally unplugged my laptop. Let's plug it back in. There we go. Everything is about catching a reader's attention. So, but we really do have categories that they all seem to fall into. Number one, the big one, is to introduce your character. So you're starting with, who are we talking about? Scarlett O'Hara, main character, this is what she looks like. And we go back to Emma, and it was, here's the main character, and this is generally what her character is. Jane Austen doesn't generally tend to describe what her characters look like all that much. But then you get, besides the main characters, frequently you will set up the situation. Like with Hunger Games, we're talking about, we're setting up who I am. The main character, the speaker, is first person, and she has a little sister named Prim. And there's this mysterious thing about today is the reaping. Dun, dun, dun. So in the very first paragraph, now we have to keep reading to find out what the reaping is. So you are sort of setting up, you're giving your audiences a reason to keep reading. So you really need to get their attention in some way or another. Now, in a short story, you're going to have to use shorthand. You don't have as much time to set up your situation or your character, so you need to use shorthand. And notice how Little Women did that. In shorthand, the very first 4 sentences of the story was one sentence from each of the 4 main characters. And each of those 4 main characters in one sentence summarized what their characters are about. That Jo is the restless one, and she's complaining about not having Christmas. Meg is the oldest and remembers what it was like to be richer, and she doesn't like being poor. And Amy is the baby of the family, so she's the spoiled one. And Beth is the contented one. And in one sentence, boom, 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 we just set up all their characters in shorthand. So which is very good for short stories. We also have, you're setting up a situation like the reaping and so forth. Another way to start a book and catch people's attention, we're going to move to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which in a way does absolutely none of the above of what we've been reading so far. I bet a lot of you guys can just, recite this with me. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Just right there, we have not introduced any characters. We have not introduced a setting. We don't know where we are in the universe. We don't know when we are in the universe. All we have is this rather intriguing, incredibly snarky comment, very sarcastic, that sets the tone of how the writer is going to continue to entertain us. So I'm putting this here because I know I'm going to knock everything over if I don't set that aside here. So we've got this setup. What do you do with that? Now, I'm going to now take beginnings from a rather different perspective. I happen to have, my master's degree is actually in cinema television. I double majored with English as an undergrad, but then I went on in cinema instead of English for graduate school. And the similar question is a very important part of filmmaking. You've got a script and you're the director. So as a writer, a writer is to the story what a director is to the film. You have the script, but the script is going to say, opening scene, England, 1803. And you as the director have to decide what's the first thing the audience is going to see. So it's really not that different of a question as what's the first thing the audience reads. It's really the same thing. You have to intrigue your audience, you have to bring them in. So I used Pride and Prejudice very deliberately because it has been remade over and over and over and over and over. And now we get to find out if the screen sharing that we were practicing earlier is going to work. And we're going to take a look at how several different filmmakers have chosen to take that first sentence. Actually, let's read more than just the first sentence. Let me read the first little bit here. So we've got the first snarky intro. Let's continue. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. My dear Mr. Bennet, said his lady to him one day, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last? Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. But it is, returned she, for Mrs. Long has just been there, and she told me all about it. Mr. Bennet made no answer. Do you not want to know who has taken it? Cried his wife impatiently. You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. This was invitation enough. And then we get into the long gossipy story about the letting of Netherfield Park. All right, from that script, what did filmmakers choose to do as the first thing that people are going to see when they're looking at that? And now let's find out if my share screen is going to work. Here we go. I'm starting with the Pride and Prejudice from 1940, which for those of you who know your history and Pride and Prejudice and all, it's pretty ghastly, but it's very informative, and it does set the tone right in the opening. So here we go. Hopefully, oops. Now let's get this up. And are we actually seeing the screen here?
Yes, yes, we are.
Excellent. Okay, let's take a look at 1940.
Either the show big custom busted or the picket gaps would be loose. Be coming to your daughter and submit.
Now, let me see. Yes, the pink suits you, Jane. And now you see whether the blue is becoming to you, Lily. I love you.
Several young ladies have bought new gowns for the assembly ball, but none will be more British than this muslin.
Isn't the bouquet being very much worn? Mine is, Mamma. It's been worn for 3 years.
A fashion decree muslin this season now.
It should be good enough for us, shouldn't it, Jane? Yes. Then, Miss Jane is beautiful. I know exactly how I want my costume. I shall look very worldly. How shall I look? Adorable, my love. As always.
Mr. Back, look!
So, as you see, we've got absolutely nothing so far to do anything with the original text, which I find, I mean, that version has so many things to make one shudder, like the costumes from 1830s. It's like, what were they thinking? So, but now let's move ahead to 1980 and a completely different rendition. Oops, I have to close this guy. I apologize. There we go. Good thing my fingers are working a little bit. All right, number 2, 1980.
I'm married and well under 30. A single man in possession of a good fortune coming to live at Netherfield. It is a truth universally acknowledged that such a man must be in want of a wife. Of course, he is the rightful property of one or other of the neighbourhood daughters. However little is known of his character, Charlotte.
So at least this time, after the whole long, I was already bored, I don't know about you, we actually do get to the opening line from the book is one of the opening lines in the show. So, and let us move ahead to Let's see, gotta close you. Let's get to this one. This is a stage version of Pride and Prejudice that now I have to once again close you so we can bring up the new one. Again, I apologize for all the fumbling here with my, whoa, that is not the one we want yet. Oh, bother. So I am fine. I'm gonna pass that one because it was boring anyway. So we're moving to, that is not it. Let's go in next in order. Oh, here we go. Here's the one I was looking for. My apologies. So here is a stage version of Pride and Prejudice. That was, I think this is like the late it was like 1978, I believe.
Universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering the neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters.
My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?
I have not.
But it is, for Lady Lucas has just told me all about it this morning. Do you not want to know who has taken it?
You wish to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Well, my dear, you must know, for Lady Lucas says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place and was much delighted with it.
What is his name?
Bingley.
Oh, is he, married or single?
Oh, single to be sure, my dear. A single man of large fortune. 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls.
How so? How can it affect them?
Oh, my dear Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome?
So I do find that, and they did such a nice job of compacting a whole lot into 1 minute and 10 seconds that by then we had not even had a line of dialogue in the last one we'd seen. So next, let's move to 2005 and 1995. Next is and once again, I have to close you. There we go, 1995. And the opening for a lot of I think a lot of us, the 6-hour BBC production of Pride and Prejudice.
Fair prospect. Bring him out like luncheon. It's nothing to Pemberley, I know. But I must settle somewhere. Have I your approval? You'll find the society something savage. Country manners. I think they're charming. And if I didn't take it, thank you. I shall close to the Italian directly.
Oops. Let's stop that for, sorry about that. So this time around, we had an entire, we haven't even come close to the book yet. We've just set up an entire scene that is not anywhere else in the book. But we've set up a whole lot of exposition for this character. The last version is the Keira Knightley, 2005. So share. And oh, I gotta pull you up there. Here we go. So one last rendition of the same opening.
As you wish to tell me, my friend.
So there's just one last version that was like almost 2 minutes, and it was like a long ways in before we even got that first important information that Netherfield Park is let at last. So, well, now we are getting to the more interactive part of the course. So now that we've taken a look at how so many different screenwriters took the same opening paragraphs, and what do they show, what do they say? It's incredibly subjective. Now, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just how they wanted to set the scene. Some of them spent more time introducing Lizzie, and some of them spent more time introducing the setting, and others, the one where the girl runs out of the house to go get the mail and come back, says, "I know who took Netherfield Park." That's Mary, the third sister. That's not even the main character, and that particular version, the screenwriter must have really liked that character or something, because the entire movie is very strange that way, and that the adaptation shows a lot of Mary, and it's like, Mary's a pretty minor character that they've elevated in this. It was, to me, very strange. So, all right. So if you have a piece of paper, writing utensil of some sort, I'm going to put up just a couple of images, and your job is to give us the first sentence or two from this story. And I have no preconceived notion. Oh, bother. Now I have to get to I'm having issues. It's like, where are my things? I am missing the thing I want. Let's close you. I need my images. No, it says leave meeting. I do not want to leave the meeting. Let's try getting rid of that. And my apologies. I am doing everything has been terribly awkward with my hand. There we go. Now, question is, I have to share that. Getting back to, okay, let's try to share screen, and yes, there we go. Okay, here is your image. If you've got this lovely bit with the lady and the stars, what is your first sentence for a story? It could be a short story, it could be science fiction, it could be a children's story, it is any genre, but what would be your opening sentences? Now the question is, how long do we take? I will, Salem, how long should we give them before they have to talk? They have to tell us what they said.
Maybe 2 to 3 minutes. That sound good?
Sounds great to me.
Okay.
I'm watching the clock. All right, is that about it? Is about time's up? I'm going to hit stop share. And where's my view so I could see everybody? All right. So now I pass this over to our hostess here. Do people want to share what they said?
Yeah, you can pop it in the chat and I'll read it out, or you can raise your hand if you want to read it for us. Okay, Deborah, I will unmute you so you can share. Okay, it's going to promote you to panelist for a second, Deborah, because it looks like your mic is unable. Okay, there we go. Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself first, Deborah. Should be bottom. There we go.
Emma sighed with delight as she gently floated through the magical field of stars, drifting lightly down to the inviting field of dreams.
You know, that's exactly how I feel about that. I always feel like that's what falling asleep feels like, is with that image. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Somebody else want to chime in?
So Mike shared in the chat, Mary fell and fell until she seemed to float, something she had always very much wanted to do.
I like that. Somebody else. Do we not have any other takers? This is so much easier in person.
I don't see any more hands up.
Okay. Yeah, this would have been so much easier in person, but we got the news that we were having to do this over Memorex instead of live, just like not very long ago. So, all right. Well, we're going to do the same game again. I've got a different image. Then once again, I'll put up image and give us a, whoop, come on. And here we go, doing the thing again. Let's get the, all right. Go to there, share screen. Let's see if we get it this time. There it is. Once again, you got 2 minutes. Start a story. All right, time's up. I realize I don't have to stop the share here while we're talking about it. Does somebody want to chime in and tell us what they wrote for that? Do we have any takers?
Deborah, I will unmute you, move you over to panelists. There we go.
Are we ready?
Yes, yes, we can see you.
So this one was much, much harder. But what I came up with on short notice is no one could possibly have anticipated the incredible dilemma that happened when the trooper became trapped in the phone booth.
I like that.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have a direction with this? They went with this. Any other takers? Okay, well, if no other takers, I will move on. One of the things I liked about this was that it could go in so many different genres. That, you know, this could be, is this the beginning of a thriller? Is this the beginning of a comedy, like a romantic comedy or something like that? And it just, there seems like so many different silly ways it could go, but then it was also could be, you know, like I said, a thriller would not be so silly. So we are now, I'm going to, again, this is another, this is sort of open for discussion here, that so people want to chime in. When you're starting, whatever it is, whatever reason brings you here to write, it really is, you are here for, it's like an invitation. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Every time I send an invitation for an event, I do a lot of events, that's my invitations frequently go through the who, what, when, where, how, why. It's sort of a way to organize how you're thinking. So if you use these and apply them to your writing, number one, who is your audience? And I got to tell you, everybody is not an answer. It is okay if the answer is me. I am only writing to please myself. I just want to write a book that I would actually want to read, because everything I've read so far is frustrating, whatever, and I want to write a good book. You know, that's an okay answer. There are authors out there that was how they got started, and that's why they write, is just to please themselves. That is kind of tied in with, what are you writing? What genre are you writing? You know, if you're writing, if the who you're writing for are kids, the genre you're writing for are kids books. And then it's, are you writing for 4-year-olds? You don't write for 4-year-olds the way you write for 12-year-olds, the way you write for young adults. If you're writing a thriller, if you're writing, you know, who your audience is partially tied into what you're writing. So if you go to the next one, when do you write? The best answer is every day. It's hard to get some things written. Let's face it, life just gets in the way. And trying to make time, and there are people who like to binge write. You have a weekend and just like go away and you do nothing but hide out and write. That is a perfectly acceptable answer. So actually, while we're talking about, I'll bring it up later then. Who, at, when, where do you like to write? Generally speaking, most writers tend to find that they have a ritual. I didn't even know I had rituals. I had to write a talk about my writing process, like I didn't know I had one. But personally, I like to write in pretty places. I can write in hotel lobbies. I can write by the ocean, by the mountains, in a forest, in a little cabin, at my friend's cabin in Canada, right on Lake Erie. But I like to write in pretty places. Right now, I've got the house that I'm living in now has this backyard that looks out on us. It's like a little park, and I can just sit at my own picnic table, or my own backyard table, and look at the hydrangeas and write until it got to be 90 degrees. And then, and actually the Champaign Public Library is one of my favorite places to go to write, because it's like writing inside of an art museum. It's so gorgeous in there. And walking in the lobby, and the foyer's got big green bubbles. It just puts me in a happy place. And it's like, it's a very pretty place to be writing.
I'm biased, but I agree completely.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So the how, there are a lot of different, again, that writing process is like, well, let's see if I have to get to it. Agatha Christie had a quote about, or somebody quoted Agatha Christie's writing process, which kind of fills in several of the who, what, when, where, how, whys. And the process is just too amusing to not share. But now, of course, we have to go through the whole process to get to the share screen. And where is it? Oh, of course, it's not there. Once again, we have to go through the ritual, but the quote is worth, if I can just get at it, I will read it to you. There we go. Come on. And let me close that. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to read it to you because this is getting ridiculous. And this is according to Christiana Brand, who is likes to write crime dramas. Agatha Christie once described to me her own particular method of getting down to work. She mulled over a book in her mind until it was ready, she said. Well, we all do that. But then she would repair to a very bad hotel. In a bad hotel, there was nothing to do but to write, and plenty of time to do it in. The beds were so uncomfortable that you had no inclination to retire early or to get up late. The armchairs so unyielding that you wasted not a minute in idle relaxation. The meals were so bad that there was no temptation to linger over them, and any guest who would put up with such conditions must of necessity be so stupid that you couldn't possibly make friends and spend precious moments in desultory chat. So the book would be done in a matter of weeks, and you could pack up the few dull clothes, which were all you need to bother to take with you, and go off triumphantly home. So I do not know if it's apocryphal, but it was pretty darn funny, and I just had to share that with you. So that was her writing process. But there are, I hear a lot of division between outliners and pantsers. Do you write an outline before you even start, or do you write by the seat of your pants? There are no right or wrong answers. It's just your writing style. Personally, I have, just like Agatha Christie, I know where I'm going, but that doesn't mean I outline it. Personally, when I'm reading, I personally can tell when a book was outlined. And it's like, they will do anything, everything will be sacrificed to stick to the outline. And to me, characters, when a character gets inside your head and is beating at the inside of your brain to get out, they may not always follow the outline. It's kind of like when you have a kid, you have two children, why didn't they act exactly the same? It's like, I raised them the same, I'm the same mother, but how is it they turned out differently? Characters have a mind of their own, and sometimes as the creators, you really just have to follow your pen just follows along what they make you say, because they didn't follow the outline. So to me, I think that I've seen people slavishly follow an outline, and I personally think it's to their detriment, but that's because I'm not an outliner. So I am, honestly biased, and so take what I say with that in mind. So, but it's, what you need is how your brain is going to organize. If you really need to have that outline out for your brain to be happy, that's a big part of it. So the last one, which gets back to the brain, is who, what, when, where, how, and why. Why are you writing? What are you trying to accomplish? It helps to know that. In my case, my brain hates me, and anytime I'm still trying to figure out how to take care of its last cockamamie idea, and it gives me another one when I still have 100 hours to do on the last dumb idea that I have to go through with because I really like it. But my brain keeps so I have these characters pounding at the inside of my head trying to get out, and they will make me crazy if I don't get them out on paper. So I have no choice but to write. If I have an audience or not, sometimes I'm not, yes, I care. I love my readers and so forth, but some days I'm so busy just trying to placate these characters banging on the inside of my brain, I can't think about who my audience is yet. After I have a first draft, then you go back and change things. And you'll notice that when you get all the way to the bottom of who, when, where, how, why are you writing? You're writing back to the beginning for your audience. Who is your audience? So it's really not a list, it's a loop that spirals in, it just circles in around itself over and over again. So those are the things that as you're starting a story, it really helps to know, why are you writing this? Who are you writing it for is all really important. So that's those are the there's the question out on the table. Do people want to chime in and tell us more about who you're writing for, why you're writing, where you like to write? Share with us your writing process. And I'm going to go back to view so I can see everybody. Is nobody going to chime in here? Come on, this is where we get to talk. Again, so much easier in person, I know. Any hands up?
Not yet, but yeah, feel free to raise your hand or pop a question in the chat and I can read it out.
Because if you don't talk, you're just going to have to sit and listen to me talk now. You don't want to just listen to me talk because I said everything I was going to say. It's a sort of a philosophy while we're waiting for somebody to raise their hand. I've also been run a lot of dance. I've been a dancer in many different contexts. And one thing that as a belly dancer, I have been at concerts and you'll get some woman up there, a soloist on stage for 20 minutes. There are only so many ways you can wriggle you around on a stage with your body to a certain particular song. So my philosophy that went with choreography and so much else is say what you got to say and get off the stage. Let somebody else have a turn. So here's I'm using that, that philosophy follows right into my lectures. Say what I got to say and get off the stage and hear what everybody else has to say. So that's why I'm asking you guys to talk to us about why you're here. What are you working on? Why are you writing it? I actually had a lecture just recently where I was on the recipient end and I had to explain what I'm doing, and it helps you clarify. It really helps clarify your thoughts and what's the next step.
So we had a chat come in. Deborah shared as far as process. I just write for myself. I enjoy the magic of words.
I completely agree. And it shows, it really shows. I love especially the first one. I love the way you put the first one with the falling in the stars. Come on, somebody else pipe up.
Another comment just shared. I am here to start writing. I have many thoughts, but have always struggled to put them on paper.
That does make it makes it hard. So if you have trouble putting them on paper, can you talk about them? Because if you're able to talk about them, with a friend, with your mom, with your spouse, just being able to talk about it also helps. It's easiest to put it on paper when they're inside your head. Like Agatha Christie planned everything in her head and then spilled it out all at once after she had it mostly together.
They answered and said, one thing I can do well is talk.
Excellent. So unmute yourself and talk to us. Anybody else? This is no place. This is no time. I know this has been so much easier in person, but we're stuck with this. No time to be. This is no time to be shy. It's just us. Right. Is nobody else willing to tell us about their who, what, when, where, how, why?
So a new chat came in, said, I tend to struggle with having an idea and then losing interest without finishing it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I have the same thing. I just, I can't keep up with the ideas, but, sometimes, you have an idea and this seems like a great one, now that may be a good place for an outline. If you start outlining it and as you're going through, it's like, if you're losing interest in it, it means it probably really, if it wasn't going to engage you long enough to write it all out, it may not engage readers either. And so maybe that wasn't your best idea, and keep listening for the next one because you'll probably have another idea coming. Brains are like that. They don't leave you alone. Any other comments? Come on, there's 12 of us on here. Somebody else must be willing to speak up a little bit.
A new chat says, in my head, my ideas are perfect. I mull and mull, and I mull some more. When I finally do write, what's on the page isn't perfect anymore.
Well, that's because you've had more time to process it. Actually, I got that very advice this afternoon. I have a mentor that I was Zoom chatting with from in New York. And one of the things she said is, there's no such thing as perfect. So it's like, you don't wait until it's perfect. You keep working with what you've got. So as you put them, as they come out of your head, remember that's just your first draft. So just keep going, and don't stop and censor yourself when you've just gotten it out on the paper. By the time you get, because we can only write so fast, and inside your head, it comes in, there's this explosion of ideas, but you have to translate that into words. So I think our heads think in images, and you have to translate all those images into words, like we just did with, that's why I was having us play with the images. So just keep going and don't censor yourself. Let it, once you have a first draft, then, go away, come back and read it later and fine tune it. And then, like, for me, some people they like to have a writing group where it's like, I wrote a page, read my page. Is it good enough to go on? And then they go on, and I can't do that. It's not ripe yet. It's like, I write the entire first draft. I put it away, work at something else, pull it out again and go, oh, one of my novels that I haven't finished. One of the first things I did after I pulled it out again was cut it in half and throw away the first 50%. It wasn't right. And from after I hacked it off, I went, okay, now what? All right, this is better. And I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. And then it was finally ripe enough to show somebody who pointed out some lines like, oh, I found something. It's like, oh my God, I had to rewrite everything. When I finally got around to showing it to somebody else, I had gone from writing an entire novel with no dialogue in it. And I went, oh, that's not right. So I changed it into dialogue. And when the first time I gave it to someone to read, they went, no, this is really weird. It's like, it's nothing but dialogue. Were you trying to write a movie script or something? Like, no, I was just overcompensating for the fact I realized I had no dialogue. So it wasn't ripe yet, but now I could go back again. But revising and revising and revising is just a natural part of the process. So it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be what you were trying to say. In fact, the way I like to put it is honest. Is it is it, I'm trying to be honest with my stories. This is really what what I'm telling is, people are supposed to read this and trust what I'm saying. So it's honest. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest.
Yeah, and a new chat came in, I think continuing from the previous comment, saying that's my struggle as well. Sometimes I get a great idea and ideas continue to flow in my mind, but it seems that I can't write fast enough and then I lose my thoughts. Or I get ideas when I'm on the go and then I have trouble recalling it when I do have a moment to write it out.
That happens all the time. Like my husband likes to write lyrics. Like he whenever he's in the shower, he'll be singing and he'll sing lyrics. And he like filks, like he'll take a song and he'll write different words to an already existing song. He gets out of the shower and he's already forgotten them. And he writes them down and he can't quite get them. They were perfect in the shower, but he can't remember all of them. It happens, but don't let that discourage you. Think of it as it's just practice. It's like the first time you play the piano, you didn't get every note right. You have to do it over and over again. And the more that you just write, the more easily you'll find that the words are there for you when you need them. And sometimes the things that come out later, it's like, it was perfect and I can't come up with it. That means you just have to do it again. And your third iteration will be better than your second or your first. But you just have to sort of trust yourself, that you trust your brain and keep writing. And it does get easier with practice. My first novel took me 10 years to write. My second novel took me 3 years to write because a lot of the research was already done. And a lot of it was research and I had to do it long distance. My third novel took me 8 months. No, it took about a year to write. The next novel took me 5 months to write. And the one I'm working on right now, I'm writing 2,000 to 4,000 words a day. So it's probably gonna take me a month or two. So it's just doing it. So don't just trust your brain and keep trying. Don't be, when it didn't come out right, get down what you can. And when you just can't get any more, don't think it's writer's block. Just go away. Just go make dinner. I tend to write next to the sewing machine. My first book I wrote out longhand. I had spiral bound notebooks and everything is written out longhand and I had to type it in. But I would sit next to the sewing machine and it's like, I have it. I write it down. That's not right anymore. Go back to sewing. And then, or I'm writing. I don't know what the next thing to say is. Rather than stress over it, turn around to the sewing machine and think, and then go back and it's there. So just writing, and it doesn't have to be good. Nobody else has to see it until you let somebody else see it. So if you make all the mistakes in the world, that's fine. It's our little secret. It's your little secret with yourself that nobody's going to see it until you're ready, but just keep writing.
Thank you, Jeanette.
So, and this is 1 hour? So I just saw it's exactly 8 o'clock. Does anybody else have any last commentaries?
Yes, yeah, we are nearing the end, but we have time for like a couple more questions. If people want to pop them in the chat or raise your hand. While we are waiting to see if any more questions come through, I do want to give one more reminder for the next writing workshop. So our next one will be on September 15th. The topic will be choosing your theme with local author and editor Ekta Garg. So sign up for that one to get the Zoom link if you haven't already.
That makes it sound hard. The theme. I write my stories and after the fact, I figure out what the theme was. They usually have one, but sometimes actually some of my books, my readers, when they're doing reviews, tell me what the theme was because I didn't know. It was like, I didn't know what it was. I was just telling a story. So yeah, that's another thing. Again, trust yourself, and you've got this story banging inside your head for a reason. Just be honest and tell it. And we'll see you on the 15th.
a question just, I'm sorry, a comment just came through saying, thank you, Jeanette. So glad you could do this talk tonight.
So glad to help. It's always fun to talk with other writers.
A lot of people saying thank you in the chat.
Okay.
Well, thank you again for tonight. This was a lot of fun and very informative. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you need a good place to write, the library is awesome. I absolutely adore that. If you don't want to go inside because of COVID, you get a coffee and go sit on the patio.
Absolutely.
It's a fantastic place to write.
Thank you. Well, we will see everyone at the next workshop. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you soon. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.